Today let's talk about solving proportions. So let's get right into that. First question we have to ask ourselves is, what is a proportion? Well, a proportion is an equality of two ratios. It is just saying that two ratios are equal. That's all it amounts to. So if we look at this one on the end, 6 over 9 equals 8 over 12. We are saying that these two fractions say the same exact thing, that they are equal. And there are four methods we can use in order to determine if they are equal. And I'm sure there's probably others, but these are the four that we came up in class today. One is I could find a common denominator. Change the 9 and the 12 to a common denominator. Change our numerators to match to see if they come out the same. Another one is we could take each of these fractions and simplify them down to see if they make the same ratio. Another one is take each of the fractions and change them into decimals and see if they say the same decimal. But the one we're going to focus on is actually cross products. We're actually going to take the 9 and the 8, multiply them together, take the 6 and the 12, multiply those together, and if their cross products are equal, then the two ratios say the same thing. In algebra, this is called the multiplication property of equality. And there's a lot of algebra here that goes with this, but basically what it says is that if I take the cross products of each, that they will be equal in a proportion. So 6 times 12 is 72, 9 times 8 is 72. If they say the same ratio, they are equal. This is arithmetic, or just arithmetic, just with plain numbers. Okay? But in algebra, we want to generalize this so that I can use any numbers to see if it will work. And in this case, if we say that they are equal, then I should be able to multiply A times D together and B times C together, and their products be equal. So let's see if we can solve a proportion using this same method. So our proportion here is x over 9 is equal to 4 over 6. Well, the one thing that's different in this one is the fact that I don't know one of my pieces. And that's what your job is to solve that, is to find that. In our proportion that we had here, we had all the pieces and we knew that they were equal. Well, if I know that this is a proportion, that these two ratios are equal, I can use cross products to find our missing part. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this algebraically. We're going to cross multiply the 6 and the x. We're going to cross multiply the 9 and the 4. So if I cross multiply the 6 and the x, I get 6x. And if I cross multiply the 9 and the 4, I get 36. Now that should look familiar to you because it's just a one-step equation. Our job is still the same as it was in our last unit, and that was to get the x by itself, or to find the value of x. So to get the x by itself here, I have a multiply by 6, so we do a divide by 6. Do that to the other side, and we end up with x equaling 6. So the value that should go here is 6, and it makes it a true proportion. Let's see if we can do a couple more just to make sure we understand what we're doing. So in this one right here, we have this proportion, h over 9 equals 2 over 3. So we, again, do our cross products. 3 times h is 3h equals 9 times 2, which is 18. I need to get h by itself, so we divide both sides by 3, and you end up with h equaling 6. Simple as that. Now the second one is a little bit different because our letter is over here on the right-hand side. So when we multiply these together, it's a little uncomfortable sometimes because when I multiply the 4 and the 55, it normally goes here on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So we end up with 220, okay, which is 55 times 4, equals 5 times t, which is 5t. We divide both sides by 5, and we end up with t equaling, I believe it's 44. All right? Now, most of us are uncomfortable with this letter over here on the right-hand side. So a lot of times what I do is I just take the d times 6, wherever that's going to be. I take the letter side, or the letter part, d times 6, or the 5t, or the 3h, and I just write it on the left-hand side. And it works the same either way because of the equality. And then we do 21 times 22, and I believe that is 462. Then we divide both sides by 6. We'll bring up our calculator just to make sure. Let's see, 21 times 22 And sure enough, it was 462. We divide that by 6, and we come up with D equaling 77. Now, where is this headed? Okay, solving these proportions, this is a skill lesson, and some of you think, well, I've been doing this for a while, but where is this headed? Well, in algebra, our proportions are going to change a little bit. They're going to look something like this. X plus 5 over 6 equals 2x minus 3 over 5. Well, we're going to take this same concept that we're doing here to solve this one down here. And we do the same basic thing. We're going to cross multiply. Okay, it's just we have to learn something called the distributive property for us to do this. So if I were to cross multiply this 5 and the x plus 5, I would end up with 5x plus 25. If I cross multiply the 6 times the 2x minus 3, I end up with 12x minus 18. And then our goal is still to solve for x. By the end of the year, we'll be solving this problem. Okay? So that's what we're kind of looking at when we're talking about solving proportions. Now, one of the things that we can do with this is determine if two things are proportional or not. Okay? So in this one it says, do the ratios 4 over 6 and 10 over 4 form a proportion. Well, in order for us to do that, we go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the lesson. If they are going to be a proportion, these two things have to say the same ratio. So we have to compare these two fractions. Like I said, the way we do that is we determine, are these equal by doing our cross products. So if we do 6 times 10, we get 60. 14 times 4 gives us 56. Are those equal? No, they are not. So these two fractions don't say a proportion. They don't make the same thing. And one of the reasons why we need to know how to do this is, what if we had two picture frames and we wanted to know if this one picture frame is proportional to another? They have to have proportional dimensions, and this is one reason why we do this. So let's now look at a regular proportion problem. Okay, in the real world, you're going to be given word problems to be able to, that you'll have to answer, or given that in some form. So in this one right here, it says 100 nautical miles equals about 150 standard or statute miles. How many standard miles equal 156 nautical miles? Well, anytime you have a word problem that we're dealing with ratio and proportion, there's going to be a ratio that I know. In this case, 100 nautical miles is the same as 115 standard miles. So that's the ratio I know. 100 nautical miles over 115 standard miles. And that sets up our ratios. And it sets up our labels. So now I'm looking for, what is it that I want to know? Well, it says how many standard miles are equal to 156 nautical miles. So the 156 nautical miles, it's going to go on top because of the labels. And now what I'm looking for is this one. Okay, so to solve this, we cross multiply. 100x equals 115 times 156 gives us 17,940. We divide both sides by 100. We end up with x equaling 179.4. So based on our answer choices here, our answer has to be 179, because it does say round your answer to the nearest whole number. Now, what are we going to do on our homework tonight? Well, our homework, you have just some basic problems. I told you this is just a skill level lesson. So what I want you to do on your notebook paper is you're going to write down the proportion, and then you're going to solve it for me. So in this first one here, we're going to do 16 times n, which is 16n equals, and then 8 times 12, which gives us 96. And we're going to divide both sides by 16. And n is equal to, when we do 96 divided by 16, we get 6. Now, some of your problems on this one, you may end up with decimal answers. That's okay. You may end up with repeating decimal answers. Just make sure you write your answer as either a fraction, if you know the repeating decimal, or as a correct repeating decimal.